Yeah, NFL too. So those videos, Ryan, and just kind of peek behind the curtain. We do some advertising and we make some content for some of the sponsors. And 3 times now I've made a TikTok on a game I didn't really want to bet for profit exchange, just to kind of help make people aware of the exchange out there in New Jersey. I'm 3-0 on those. Like, and they're always games. It's like, I don't want to bet this game.
Yeah,
And
just
then,
forced into
well,
it.
I'm like, and then it's like, well,
video.
I'm not. If I'm gonna make a piece of content, I'm not just gonna fucking come up with some garbage and say I would bet the Saints here and here for no
I can
reason.
attest to that for Andy. Andy will not show up on a show or do a video or anything that is not something that he's putting his money on or something that he likes. It is
Yeah, no,
go toe to toe with the bosses on that sometimes too, for sure.
It bugs me. So
yeah.
So last night I ended up chasing the steam, and after I did my research, I was mad that I didn't have an under already, and the line had dropped down like 2.5 points. But I did take the under, so that touchdown was kind of annoying. The one where they just stopped playing and just kind of let him run in. Like, no, what are we doing? What are we doing here, Juwan? So, but regardless, yeah, back to golf. We are where the World Series was. It's been an exciting week down in Houston, and they're back. This was played on a different course for years. Now it is kind of like right in downtown Houston. And this is unique for the swing season because it's not a garbage dumpster course that someone's going to shoot 25 under.
Right.
And it's not a garbage dumpster field. Like, there is a bunch of top players here. It's not a US Open or TPC Potomac, like, oh my God, these guys are going to struggle. But it's a tough course. It's a tough enough course for the swing season, and it's not long, but it's medium long, and it's going to play tough enough. So this might actually be interesting golf to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you're better than, for you to admit that you were close to Henley. I probably leak in my game, even though in anything I ran last week, he's definitely right up there. I just never gave him any consideration because I've been the holder of Henley tickets on Sundays when the Sundays collapse happened, and Saturday night you feel like you're rolling and you're up, a handful of strokes, and he's come back to the field. It's a live guy. He should go to live because he's built for 54 holes of golf. But good to see him close and get enough of a lead because he tried to give it back a little bit on Sunday for a bit, but then he in the field again though, and half the odds that he was last week, which is interesting. He does have some nice course history here. As you mentioned, this has been, the Houston Open has been on tour for a while. It used to be the shelled Houston Open at a different course that would be the week ahead of the Masters, and now it's a swing season event. Though now that they moved to the Memorial, this course, it is, like you said, it's tough. It does have some Masters Augusta feels to it.
Yeah,
very limited bunker play. Length is an issue here. You got to be long, I think. Again, we only have a couple of leaderboards here to go off of. There's been some guys at the top that aren't necessarily guys you would consider bombers, but because you can use driver off the tee without getting punished too much, you are going to be forced into a lot of long irons here. Having those be a little bit shorter is definitely advantageous. And then we have Bermuda grass, and we have a handful of Bermuda specialists here, and around the green matters here too. Is Ron's work looking at his preview this morning with these shaved runoffs, these false fronts, and these like crown greens. It's really hard to hold the greens. They're bouncy and fast. And so I do think around the green stuff matters here too. So I have a very light card and just found one number that I thought was way off market. But as you mentioned, there is a nice top tier handful of guys that we really like. And I'm interested to see how we talk through this, what you're valuing here. Do you think that length is something that we should make go out of our way to kind of profile here, or what are you kind of looking at?
Yeah, like I said, it's harder when we haven't played a bunch of events here, and we don't have a big sample size of here's what's worked generally. Like, if you look at the top 20 or just the distribution of winners, the distribution of guys who played well, here's what's played well, here's what's worked for certain players. So you've only played here a couple of years. Not a big sample size, but you can see what happens, like what occurs. And like you said, there's a big distribution of shots over 200 yards with your irons, like more so than I think maybe that's a good way to look at some of these things. Like what happens way more often than an average, tour course, or way less often. There's some it's like, well, hey, around the green here is non-existent because the greens are the size of Connecticut and like there's just no runoff area. I'm talking other courses, but there's certain places where it's like, hey, this doesn't matter at all, or this is never going to occur because if you miss this green, like it doesn't matter if you're a really good around the green player, you suck so bad at your second shot and your irons that you're not going to be in contention. What's the point of even looking at it? So, and here, yeah, I think total driving probably going to be important. It's going to just be important to be longish. It is a 7,400 yard course, but at the same time, you do have to line yourself up to score. It's going to be a bogey avoidance course. It's going to be a scrambling around the green. I stopped myself when I was giving that example. I'm like, God, Andy, what a horseshit example, because it's like people are going to think you're talking about this week. I'm not. This week it is actually going to matter some scrambling, some around the green, some bogey avoidance. You're going to need to get yourself in a position to score if you're not finding that green on that second shot. So there's some guys that are great about that, and there's some guys that are really good off the tee. And what stinks is, most of these top players are good at both of them, and I've just kind of been forced to avoid the top of the market. I can't bet Scheffler at 6-1. He had a great Sunday. He had a great week. He just kind of dum-de-dum, top 5, whatever. And, Sam Burns, great. Bermuda. Aaron Wise has been great. Tony Finau has been great all the way back through the summer. But I'm just, between the 4 of them, I'm not interested in taking these prices under 20-1.
And that's it too, right? It's like it's a better field, but it's not a great field. And I do think that there's a tier at the top that you kind of have to make a decision on, because are you going to get into a bunch of longer shots or the mid-range, or should you go towards the top? And Scotty almost won here last year. You mentioned last week. I mean, there's putter changes and some stuff that's been happening in the swing season, and it looked pretty good last weekend as well. Obviously, as you mentioned, ho hum top 5 as we've seen with Scotty. But yeah, you're looking at 550, 6-1, which is really hard to do in any golf tournament to kind of lay that kind of win equity at the top. Burns just behind him. There's some 14s on Sam. Sam's a guy I love to go to. We know we're on Bermuda. Sam has got 2 top 7s here. Top 7 last time out as well. He's definitely playing some good golf and is comfortable here. Tony looked a little rusty last week, but again, towards Friday, you kind of got to go in a little bit. And when you think about what matters here, he kind of jumps off the page in a big way. And, but you're still looking at 18s, 19 on Chris is probably the biggest number. You see an 18s on 365 and MGM. And then Aaron Wise, I'd love to not go back to Aaron Wise, but like I messaged you yesterday, I had him second in what I think matters here this week, because he's, with all those long irons, he's been terrific. Par 4 scoring. It is a weird course where there's only a couple of par 5s. They're really long, and there's a bunch of par 3s. Most of them are long. There's a couple of smaller ones too. Par 4 scoring, I think, can matter here. Bogey avoidance, a lot of things that I think matter. Aaron Wise is really good at. So now we're just getting rich under 20 for me to continue to chase the Wise carrot. And Decky is one that I know you and I kind of feel the same about. I think we just have had so many health question marks, whether it's like he on a Wednesday drops out of the Pro-Am, or like there's a report on a back issue still. Like he's just really hard to back right now until we get, I guess, a little bit more consistency from him health wise, because that is kind of the top tier. I like a bunch of guys just have a hard time getting in that market.
I still don't understand how this guy has won tournaments too. When he comes in, and he was at the 3M when I was up there. I've seen him, a few different. I've watched this at like, you get clips from people, and this isn't just like a one-off thing. He goes into a week and he goes out to the driving range on like Tuesday or Wednesday with like 7 3-irons, and like decides which one he's going to. I can't fathom like just switching clubs constantly like that. He's a different kind of cat. And yeah, the injury concerns kind of have me worried, but I did go to that mid tier. I kind of avoided this whole top thing. I'm not going to be betting, Henley at this price that he's at now. McNeely isn't somebody I've traditionally wanted to back in this sort of spot. Like you said, Matsuyama is injury concern. I backed Taylor Montgomery last week. The price this week kind of stinks. Jason Tay at 26. That's not something I'm going to do. And I mean, just that whole middle tier, there are a bunch of guys I like, and I like the look you took. I did put a few in the Discord this morning, and somebody I backed earlier in the swing season, I've kind of avoided since, but I went back to the well on Emiliano Grillo, basically 50 to 1, kind of across the board. There wasn't a big difference in his price from book to book to book. I ended up finding a 50-50, and even, that one extra little bit, I'll always take that little extra bit there. But Grillo is, like we talked about, good drives, gain, ball striking, all that stuff. He's up pretty high there. He's a $9,100 guy on DraftKings. Like, he should probably be like 35-40 to 1 here. This is more of a price play. He's never come through for me before. I mean, that's happened with a lot of guys. I mean, I've bet guys who've won their first tournaments. That's always fun. But a big thing I did look at again, like I said, was longer proximity for longer irons. And over the last 50 rounds, over 200 yards proximity, he was first. That helped kind of bump him up, kind of help me decide that he was good enough to go here. And he's just a really good greens and regulation guy. He's been okay on Bermuda, and I think the price is probably depressed because he had a couple shitty weeks in a row. It wasn't horrible, but CJ Cup, he wasn't great, and he wasn't great at Mayakoba. But, he's a guy since the John Deere. He's had 4 top 5s. Feel like he's going to pop, and it's going to be one of these events. I don't have him winning the goddamn Masters, but, Grillo here, 50 to 1, back to the goddamn well.
I'm with you. I think that's probably a misprice in relation to the market. Like, he probably should be 40 or 35 or so. So he does feel like long at 50. Because I'm looking at some stuff. If I mess around with like last 36 rounds or something like that, messing around with soon to be released tool that we have over at BetSports Golf, Grillo is top 4 for me in the last 36 rounds. And whether it's, you mentioned the long irons, good on par 3s. Par 4 scoring is great. Bogey avoidance is terrific. Just overall tee to green game, 8th in this field. So, everything that you want him to do. Middle of the pack from a driving distance standpoint, but, like, not short. So it's not like he's disqualified. And, the around the green stuff can be, hit or miss, but that's for a lot of these guys. So no problem with Grillo with that number for sure. There's a bunch of these guys in the middle. And I when I'm feeling like this, and of course we don't see a lot, and I don't know, I feel like building and just kind of picking one golfer archetype and going down that path is the way to go. And I kind of want to lean on driving distance here, because when I'm kind of reading some of the quotes from Ron's articles, even the previous year's quotes, last year's article as well, like, you just hear these guys, the Matthew Wolfs of the world, just be like, hey, I feel really good about taking a driver out on all these holes, because it's Parkland style tree line, but the tree lines this is not a tight tree line course. And the rough can be kind of sticky. It can sit up a little bit. So, like, there's just not a lot of penalties for these guys missing.
There's hardly any bunkers. I think there's
Correct.
like 15 bunkers in the whole thing. There's a little bit of water, but it's not super dangerous.
Yeah.
Your only real danger here is finding a bad spot in the rough. And even then, sometimes it's not going to be the worst. It's just going to be like spin and control out of the rough. It's going to be a little difficult. It's 2.5, 3-inch rough. But like, if you can hit the piss out of the ball, sometimes even that is mitigated. It's like, well, I'm hitting out of the rough, but I'm pretty goddamn close to the green. I don't have to control it. I don't have to spin it as much. So I think, distance probably matters quite a bit here. I'd love total driving, but distance, I don't mind upweighting that.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I landed on Taylor Pendrith at 60, which is gone now. We're basically at 50s as your best bet. DraftKings is a 50. MGM has a 50. Just the guy who I know you've been on quite a bit too. The swing season hasn't been great. He's only played twice, but, made the cut both times, Shriners and Fortinet. But obviously at the tail end of the season last year, we had, a handful of top 20s basically to end the year. So like him quite a bit. And again, when distance matters, he's a guy that we should be looking at. And at 60 just feels like a bad number for this guy who played pretty well at the President's Cup too. Again, I want to wait back to more long-term form. He's going to be looking better than, short-term form. As I said, I just think it's a bad number for a guy that can bomb it and sometimes does have accuracy off the tee as well. He's not just a sprayer. There's some really good weeks. Some of his best finishes, he's actually plus on accuracy that week as well. So if he puts it together from a total driving standpoint, I think he's going to be in the mix, and 60 is just a bad number.
Yeah, best I can find in the offshore world right now is about 48. So if you can find a 50, good for you on that. I don't hate that. He's somebody that, just looking at what I weighted this week, he's not very far out. I have him fairly high per usual. His form's been fine. Greens and regulation, irons, all that ball striking is up there. And then what I used for a course fit look this week, he's top 15 for me. So 60 is probably pretty long. That was a good grab by you. And the rest of mine are longer. I don't have a ton to say. It might be kind of a short show today.
The rest of my looks are longer, maybe in this range and longer. So yeah, we could fire off a bunch of dudes that I think are pretty interesting, because there's a handful that I think could get my money. Could be just one of those, sprinkle on a bunch of these 50 plus guys and call it a day. Just hope the top of the board doesn't hit.
That's kind of what I did. So I scraped in from Bovada, and it was a bunch of guys that were 50 to 1 there. And I said, any of these people that I can find better than 50 to 1 at a different book, I'll probably bet. And there's 5 or 6 guys. I ended up betting 4. Alexander Noren, the Swede. Not someone I've backed a ton. Decent driver, not the most accurate, but he's good with the second shots. And his form is probably pushing him down here. He just hasn't had a good finish in quite a while. He was good in the spring. He had a nice finish at out in Phoenix. He played well at the Honda. He played well last year, well in the playoffs, and then I didn't do much in the swing season. This is more of just a course fit thing. I have him high enough in a few spots where I'm going to use him. He's just a good scrambler, a decent guy off the tee, high in bogey avoidance, above average ball striker. This isn't a really pretty one. This isn't a super sexy name. I'm not actually that excited about this one. It was just a big enough number where I'm like, well, Alex Noren is somebody who can make a run at a course like this.
Yeah, second at the Alfred Dunhill in Europe in October. So yeah, that's decent finish of late. Not a guy that I would profile for this course, but again, if it feels like a long number with the guys he's around, and if the ball striking is good, he's very much in play. So yeah, I've heard some people in the industry talk about him too.
My last one is a guy who does not profile for this course, but give me a second on him. Another one I backed, Matthew Nesmith. This is a name that has been bandied around quite a bit this week, and he is one that, again, good drives gained, total driving, ball striking, all that stuff super high. Around the green isn't as good. His proximity from 200 plus wasn't as good as like a Grillo, but this was a pretty big number. He's somebody I'm fine backing here. And yeah, he's also a decent enough driver. It's not like massive off the tee. This is more of a, hey, this guy's form is just stellar right now. He's had just a bunch of top 10s here. He played well throughout the summer. He was another one too, had some good finishes in the spring, and like he's a guy, but he's an Andy's guy. He's a guy I've backed quite a bit. So
yep.
I don't know.
Sense.
He's more of a course fit and just a big fat number here as well. Getting 68.50 on him. And then here's what, if you want driving distance, this ain't it. Andrew Putnam. Oh, I don't know. Like you could pick this one apart too, but
I was there last week. I mean, the form's good. The form is good. He's been playing good golf.
Yeah, so he's shorter off the tee. So if someone is going to win it, who's shorter off the tee, hopefully it's Andrew Putnam. He is below average driving distance. Really. I mean, if you're below average in driving distance, you better be good at accuracy. He's good at accuracy. He's great accuracy with his second shots, greens and regulations, just overall ball striking. And yeah, the form is good. He did really well at the Zozo. He played well over the summer. He had some top 20s, some top 10s, top 5 at the St. Jude. He's another one too that, just looking back at his year as a whole, he was right there with Hoagie for a bit at Pebble Beach. I don't know. It's not a guy I'm super psyched about backing a ton this year, but the form was good enough. The number was huge, and hopefully driving doesn't matter as much because he's going to be hitting at 285 quite a bit.
Yeah, hopefully he's got the 3 irons and 3 woods dialed up this week. I'm going to go Bomber's Paradise and see if there's anyone here that got close to you, to your card on your numbers or anything like that, because there's a handful of guys that I think are very interesting. One's Keith Mitchell, which I'm thinking is maybe a guy. I know it's a guy that you're not afraid to go to Killer Keith. Recent form hasn't been great, but long term, I think Keith Mitchell is probably better than some of these things are indicating here. Looks like there's 66s out there on MGM. Is probably the best number. Otherwise, there's 50s and 60s. Keith Mitchell is very interesting to me. Wyndham Clark basically is just driver and putter anyway. It's a little short, to be honest, like 70 for Wyndham Clark. I kind of wish it was like 100, to be honest, but that's the only time that I think if we want to look at Wyndham Clark is when these things matter. And sometimes if you can put together something with the irons that week, it makes a little sense. If this is going to be like Augusta, then Cam Champ rolls into Augusta every year with no form and just T10s. And there's something to that, I think. Cam Champ is out there at 100 in some spots. He is 65 on FanDuel. So FanDuel took some Cam Champ action, but 100 everywhere else. Obviously, that's pretty much Cam Champ's MO is being able to bomb it. Dean Burmeister. We don't hear a lot of Dean. Spends a lot of time on the Euro Tour, but he's an absolute bomber. 70 at Chris looks like the best number. 66, 65 on domestics is interesting to me. And Trey Mullinax, another name that I say quite often here. 150 for Trey. That's probably going to get money for me. Again, Southeast course. We like Trey on Bermuda. Again, another guy that can absolutely mash it. I think he's actually better than these other guys that he's down here with from a skill set standpoint. So Mullinax is very interesting to me. And the other one's Sepp Straka. Straka's not necessarily a bomber, but Straka's been playing very well up until last week. He's back here. We're on Bermuda. He basically, like in tough courses too. Remember when he won the Honda, which is a tough track at PGA National. Straka's been playing pretty good. He missed the cut here last year, but 4th and 5th the first 2 times that we were here on this track. So he's obviously fared pretty well. Again, we like him on Bermuda. So those are kind of some guys that I'm eyeballing. Again, I could probably hit all of them, to be honest, because they're not going to cost me very much to get access to all of them for what I want to do. So any of those guys that I mentioned come close to where you're at on your numbers?
Maybe Burmester. Just a couple of the guys I have trouble with their second shots.
For sure.
Like Keith Mitchell, that's kind of what can hold him up. It's like, hey, this guy is hitting the piss out of the ball, and then he's for some reason finding the bunkers around the greens and not hitting the green. Like greens in regulation percentage is tougher than the average course. This is going to be a tougher place to find the greens, to get close, to have birdie opportunities. And the guys that suck at that, unless they play a little better than average than they're normally playing at that, they're just not going to compete here. That's probably where I have a problem with like a Keith Mitchell, but Burmester's somebody I like quite a bit. And I looked at him a little. Out of everybody, he ranks out a little higher than anyone else you mentioned there. And his form has just been solid.
Yeah. Mullinax 18th in approach in the last 36 rounds. Like there's been some good golf in there. So again, 150 feels like a bad number for him. So that'd probably be my favorite of that bunch, but I might just all these guys, to be honest, just lighter units, just to, again, just bleeding out outright units in the swing season, but we'll catch up a little bit later. But, I think that's probably, like I said, when I feel like there's a really clear top of the board that I don't want to dive into, I probably either look at maybe Burns or Scotty and then just kind of leave it alone, or take a bunch of shots down the board. And it might be more fun to take a bunch of shots down the board. So
maybe I just parlay, what's his face? Scotty with like Georgia to win the title. Just fucking, I've done shit like that. I have parlay. What was it? Ram down in Mexico, not Mayakoba, but the other Mexican one in like
Yep.
Puerto Vallarta. He was like 7-1 or something. I parlayed him with some baseball or something. Like that's the only way I can actually have fun with those. Like you gotta give me like 15, 20-1 on something like this. When like alt baseball lines, I'll do that once in a while. But yeah, I can't touch the top of this board unless it's some sort of live entry. So yep, nothing but 50s and better for me with Grillo, Pendrith for you, Noren, Nesmith, and Putnam for me. And then if I have anything else, I'll put it in the Discord. You can get access to that Discord. Again, still just $1 to the month because we're still in the garbage swing season. Good golf doesn't start until Tournament of Champions rolls around in January. $1 a month over BetSports Golf. Full access to everything, including the new tool that Tech Team has promised here in a couple weeks. I mean,
Yep.
we're currently doing live testing on it, so pretty excited about being able to build some custom models on BetSports Golf and then save them and use them later. That's going to be the best part about all of this. So
You'll be able to see what Andy and I built for the week and have access to what we've weighted as important to be able to access what we have and, poke holes in it, make your own iterations based off of maybe the foundation that we built and tinker and go from there. There'll be something that you'll have access to as well, which we're pretty excited about. It's definitely unique in the space.
Agreed. So for me and for Ryan and for everyone here at the BetSports Golf family, enjoy the Houston Open. Enjoy the week. If you have anything, mash us on Twitter. It doesn't even say the right Twitter handle for you under your name right now. I gotta fix that. It's Ryan Noonan. That's Ryan Noonan is like that sounds like an off-brand seltzer. So with that, I'll talk to some producers about fixing that. That's funny. But yeah, follow us on Twitter. Hit us up if you have anything you want to chat some golf, and we'll catch you next week.